Well, here we are in 2025, and the Big 12 still has a big problem.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. That's Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12. He's not brought to you by Game Time, but this episode is. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Jim Knowles leaving Ohio State for Oklahoma might be coming to a report near you. And does Washington elevate in the Big Ten? That's today's show. But first, that is Drake 12 with a one-time Big 12 member, right? Arkansas? Yeah?
You just said Drake 12, and I think I love it.
I think I like it too. Here's what the Big 12 shouldn't like, though, Drake Toll. I said, and took some very hurtful flack last year, I will point out, by the way, for declaring the Big 12 was going to be a one-bid conference in the college football playoff. I don't see that changing in 2025. Am I wrong?
It certainly could, and there is a very clear avenue to get there. That avenue is, hey, BYU, don't lose to Kansas. In the event that BYU had not lost to Kansas, we're talking about a much different outcome for the Big 12 later in the season, and that is Arizona State still beating BYU. They sit where SMU sat. SMU was 11-2, lost to Clemson, still made it to the college football playoff. If BYU wins that game against Kansas, we might be talking about a BYU team who goes to the Big 12 championship, loses to Arizona State. Their only two losses. Arizona State, who we know now was good, and they get to make it automatically because they won their conference, and then BYU sits at 11-2, and they're right there. And again, the same spot as SMU, except they beat SMU at SMU, and college football game outcomes still kind of matter.
What do you want to bet the committee would try to talk their way around that?
Well, let's think about this. Do we agree or disagree the committee is subjective?
Oh, that's 100% agreement.
For sure, right? So if we're talking money, branding, things that would be good for the sport, BYU certainly carries way more weight than SMU. And sure, they're the flagship university of one of the world's fastest growing faiths. So of course, they're right there. And they bring in a ton of viewership, the second most in the Big 12, right behind Colorado. So with that under consideration, there's a way. I mean, everyone would point and say, well, BYU kind of did beat SMU head to head. And from there, they would have a case. And in the same vein, too, if SMU had beaten Clemson, ACC's, they're a one-bid league. I think the Big 12 the ACC are still in bed here with each other when it comes to that case of you might be a one-bid league year in and year out. For the Big 12 next year, what it's going to take is 11-1 versus 11-1 in the conference championship game, or 11-1 versus 10-2, 12-0 versus 10-2. And the better record of those two loses. At that point, you get into the college football playoff. You're probably still a 12 seed, or you're a 7 seed. And we'll have to talk about seeding because Brett Yormark said no when the college football playoff committee said, let's just seed everybody reasonably and not give buys to the conference champions. In the case that the Big 12 has two schools that don't eat each other alive, this conference is a two-bid league. It's just a matter of playing the wins and losses game.
I do want to clarify that there is a heavy level of facetious sarcasm in the remark that I made regarding the committee. They would never make such a colossal blunder as to ignore a road victory, right? They wouldn't do that. I hope not. I wouldn't think so. I don't think so. I mean, they put in SMU over Bama, so I mean they've got something squared away in that particular room. But I am glad that results on the field can and do matter, because I'm a big regular season guy. Yes, Drake, we'll get to you here in just a moment. But I come back to the point that I originally made to start this segment, which is, how are you getting two 11-1 teams in the Big 12? No, I have not admittedly crunched the numbers on every single schedule to see, is it even possible? But I know that it is. It happens in conferences. It has happened before. It is technically possible. Or an 11-1 losing to a 10-2 or a 9-3 that makes the conference championship game. That's another way for the Big 12 to get two teams in. But the only way to guarantee that you get there is you have two 11-1s. And I mean, right now, Drake, who are the two teams going 11-1 in the Big 12 next year?
Now, let me say this. Very happy that Colorado, very happy this last season, Colorado, BYU, and Arizona State were all kind of on a path. Iowa State was there before Arizona State, on a path of each going in that 10-2, 11-1 category and making it tough on the committee. Had it been BYU, 12-0. Iowa State, 11-1. Colorado, 10-2. Then you're going, oh, shoot, they're all kind of around there. What do we do here? Because Colorado was such a big moneymaker. They beat out the second most watched Big 12 team by 15 million views last season. I mean, they tripled
and
up.
that wasn't even the same level of viewership as they had in 2023.
Right. And they were like slamming everybody. Deion Sanders, not Colorado. Deion Sanders was tripling everybody up in viewership. So on that note, the Big 12 was almost there, and almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So I'm not going to make the case the Big 12 should have gotten more respect because of that. Though, if we hit that perfect scenario next season, it would be because a Baylor, who brings a lot back, number 19 preseason per The Athletic, or an Iowa State, or a Kansas. Kansas State doesn't play BYU next season. Iowa State, Kansas State opened the year in a non-conference game in Dublin, Ireland. So there are a couple of weird deals in the Big 12 next season that could spit out 11-1, 11-1. Oh, wait. And 11-1. You could have 3 11-1 teams. You could have 2 12-0 teams and
but
one 11-1
do you really think that
team.
those teams are all able to go 11-1? I know mathematically it is technically possible, but do you have 2 or 3 teams that can manage 11-win regular seasons? Because I loved the Big 12 title race this year. I thought it would be the most fun in the country coming into the season. I think the SEC gave it a real run for its money, but the chaos in the Big 12 lived up to my preseason hype week in and week out in that regard. I don't expect it to be any different, but that again means, Drake, that the number 1 team, by week 10, 11, 12, can lose to the number 7 or 8 team in the conference standings at any given time, because I don't see a massive differentiation here. And that's okay. I think it's what makes the Big 12 great. Yeah. I just think the downside is you're in the same predicament that you were last year, which is the fight to get a second team in the playoffs. Should BYU have gotten more consideration to be an at-large team? Yes, absolutely. Do I think they should have gotten into the college football playoff? No, I do not. I just don't think they got discussed to the level that they were actually deserving of when you consider they do have a road win over the ACC runners-up in Dallas. I just think that the Big 12 has not moved the needle enough in the hearts and minds of the college football decision makers to where they would look at this conference and give 10-2 an automatic berth like you would in the SEC or Big 10. I don't think that they are there.
Yeah, so let's back up a bit, because I do want to make the case the Mountain West, if they had 12-0 Boise State and 11-1 UNLV, would have probably gotten 2. We would have considered UNLV.
No, they wouldn't put 2 Mountain West teams in.
Guess
Not
what?
Like that.
UNLV 11-1 beats Boise State in the Mountain West Championship. 12-1, 12-1. Uh-oh, Spencer. So in the same way, the Big 12.
I know that UNLV's resume had a couple of Power 4 wins, including against Kansas and almost against Syracuse. I don't think year 1 of the playoff, the committee would have had the stones.
They won their conference.
I think they reached their limit. I think they reached their limit when they put Alabama outside the playoff. I don't think they would have put in a second Mountain West team.
And Alabama lost to Oklahoma late in the season. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt in the middle of the season. Ole Miss lost to Florida. And even Tennessee lost to Arkansas. So we make the case of the Big 12's number 1 can't lose to its number 8. Well, then why can the SEC's number 3 lose to their number 14? Oh, well, because they're the SEC. All right, how long does that last? I get it. College Football Playoff Committee wants that to be the narrative. It will continue to be the narrative. And Spencer, it's why your case is right. The Big 12 probably only gets 1 in next year. And it's the reason Brett Yormark is saying no to a new format, is because the one team that gets in for the Big 12, they're going to be seeded 10, 11, 12. They're not going to get a bye pretty much no matter what, because it's going to be reserved for SEC or Big 10 teams. That's the way that we're traveling. Brett Yormark's trying to veto that right now. And does the Big 12 deserve more respect? Could BYU have made some noise in the college ball playoff? I really do believe they would have had a shot to do so. If they beat Kansas, maybe they do get in and can actually prove that. They lost to Kansas, so see ya, you're sitting at home. With that, for me, though, the Big 12 conference...
Just to be clear, sitting. He said you're sitting at home.
Nice. There was a bit of a...
There was a little slur. It wasn't enough to where I think it warrants an edit. If not, I will get a phone call from my boss in the morning.
Don't explain it to Allie Bronson. Good to see you. The This is the case of the Big 12 where you're not getting the rightful respect you deserve from Brett Yormark's standpoint, and next season that's probably the reason you only get one in.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Do you think they could fix that?
If they said, if they added Miami, Notre Dame.
All right, Drake Toll,
Clemson,
Locked On Big 12. Everybody, he is on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And Jim Knowles might not be in Columbus as Ohio State's defensive coordinator next year. Yeah, you heard me right. First, a reminder, this episode brought to you by Game Time. Attending NFL playoff games is an experience like no other. The energy, the excitement, and the connection with other fans, that's unmatched, and that's what really matters. And Game Time is going to give you the opportunity to do that, should you so choose. Game Time has Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on the best seats that you want, and lets you focus on what matters the most. Being there. I've used Game Time before. It's really easy. You get a view of your seat before you arrive. They show you great prices. You got all-in pricing. You got a bunch of things that you want when buying a ticket to a sporting event, whatever that sporting event or other event might be. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. One of the best defensive coordinators in the country that just won a national championship might be on the move. Jay Smith, Locked On Sooners, joining me here. This has been a whirlwind of a 24-hour news cycle surrounding Jim Knowles, the Ohio State defensive coordinator, Jay, because there was an incorrect report that came out on Rivals yesterday that said he had been hired by the Sooners. Now, that appeared to have been a pre-published story because there is an anticipation that Oklahoma is going to get him. Let's start there. As we're recording the show, your thoughts on whether Jim Knowles will or will not be the next defensive coordinator for the Oklahoma Sooners?
Well, it sounds like the conversation is happening, that there's legitimate interest on both sides, and him going down by the end of this week, I don't know. I'm probably in a 50-50 space right now because it sounds like there's other teams also getting involved. We have to keep in mind, not only did the runner-up in the national championship lose their defensive coordinator, Golden is headed to the Cincinnati Bengals. The team that was in the semifinals, Penn State, lost their defensive coordinator, Tom Allen, to Clemson. So he just basically bounced. And the crazy thing is, he kind of bounced in a way to where he just like snuck out in the middle of the night. You know, they were all, partying, having a good time, everybody getting drunk, just celebrating that they made it where they made it. And they wake up the next morning like, wait, where's Tom at? You just get an announcement, Tom Allen, whatever jingle you want to put in there is now at Clemson. So yeah, he's just waving from the carriage as it's taking him away.
It's like I'm going down to Clemson, in a lateral move at best.
Exactly. But it made sense, though, because he was going closer to home. Supposedly he has daughters that are in the Carolinas. So either in North Carolina or South Carolina, doesn't matter. He's in Clemson, South Carolina. So he's a lot closer to family. And that has been the thing that's been floating around social media around Jim Knowles. Supposedly he has his fiance lives in Oklahoma, has a son that plays ball here. And that's all everybody's talking about. It's, he's trying to get back closer to her. Granted, he is 59 years old. I totally would get that. You're getting older, and all the flying is not fun as you get older. People think it's fun. It ain't when you got to do it, especially the way he has to do those turnarounds because he's in football season, and he's got to go recruit, even though I heard he doesn't like that. So my point is, my confidence level ain't the highest yet until I see someone sign on the line, which is dotted.
Yeah, and the travel in the SEC, not as extensive as the Big Ten.
At all.
Not even remote. Texas and Oklahoma, look, there is a part of me, big part of me, that wishes they were still flagship carrying members of the Big 12 conference, but geographically, they very much fit the Southeastern Conference mold. They are in the southern part of the United States, at least. But this would be a home run, grand slam, out of the park, Freddie Freeman game one of the World Series, walk-off level hire to me because Knowles is phenomenal. I mean, Ryan Day gets a lot of the discussion because he's the head coach, and you know what? He deserves it with all the crap that he's taken over the last several years and not beating Michigan, all that stuff. He deserves his flowers now. But one of the reasons that Ohio State's sitting here as the national champions from this past year is he hired a couple of coordinators that are really good. And Oregon went into their place a few years ago and beat them, and they realized, yeah, this is not the right defensive coordinator. And they went and got Jim Knowles, and he's been great. They hired him from Oklahoma State. And when Bill O'Brien moved on, he went and got a guy who he knows really well in Chip Kelly. I mean, those two guys were really good throughout. If Oklahoma pulls him from Ohio State, Jay, they'd be looking down the barrel. I think of the best overall offseason of any team in the SEC when you're talking about how much better you were than the year before.
Yeah, you get two of the best defensive minds in college football, and it's been proven. I mean, Jim Knowles ascended Oklahoma State all the way up with his defensive play. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to get them that Big 12 championship that they almost won by. They were short by a couple of inches, like literally an inch away from winning the Big 12 championship back when he was there. Then he goes to Ohio State, revamps that defense, and got to give props to Ryan Day, as you mentioned. He, as an offensive mind, he decided that, no, you know what? I'm going to step away. I'm going to run time management and manage that properly, but I'm going to let my coordinators do their jobs. He gets Chip Kelly to quit his job as a head coach at UCLA to come over as an offensive coordinator. Still a baffling move by him, but whatevs. Probably that travel.
He just won a national championship.
Well, fair there, but I mean, at the time, hindsight 50-50, so I totally agree that now is like, yeah, you won a natty. But he was
but there was also some internal strife, I think, at least between the UCLA fans and Chip Kelly. I think they said this was a great experiment and all, but we don't feel like this is the best path forward. Chip didn't love all the aspects of being a head coach in modern college football. That has been widely reported. I actually thought it made a lot of sense, and he's, of course, paid that off in the biggest way.
Yeah, he did. And he got that national championship that he was wanting and looking for, and boom, done deal. But the other question you have with that is, like, you move on from a head coaching spot to go to an offensive coordinator. Is your goal to go back up? Are you trying to ascend back up? Like Jim Knowles is a great example. Like I said, Ryan Day gives him the entire reins of the defense, and Knowles was a head coach one time, Cornell University, his alma mater, but he hasn't been one since. And now those discussions have come back in of Jim Knowles to Oklahoma, but it sounds like Penn State's looking because Knowles is from Philadelphia. So as a Cornell grad and former player and former head coach, there's an opportunity to go back closer to home. Is that what he wants to do? Me personally, I realize that most older people getting to 60 years old prefer to be in warmer climates rather than colder climates. So I'm trying to figure out what's the play of going to Happy Valley, being up there at State College, even though I know it's a beautiful area. It is almost impossible to get in there with any ease. You're driving 2 hours from some random major airport to get there. It's a trek. So what is he looking forward to do? Or is he leveraging this with both teams as a way to get more money out of Ohio State or more power? That could be it too. I've heard rumors of internal strifes there, that there's some pushback there of Jim Knowles having that much control. I don't know. But I do believe that Oklahoma has a legitimate chance. We just got to see if by the time because they do their parade on Sunday, Ohio State does. If he decides to make an announcement before that or after.
If Oklahoma pulls this off, it would be a phenomenal move by Brett Venables to hire 2 new coordinators, get a new quarterback in the portal in John Mateer from Washington State with his OC, Ben Arbuckle. And Penn State, I know, is also wanting to get Jim Knowles to be their defensive coordinator, and that would be, I think, a third straight really high-level defense coordinator for Penn State. I think the pitch, if you're the Nittany Lions, is they have higher playoff and national title aspirations in 2025 than Oklahoma does. So that might come down to, what do you want if you're Jim Knowles? Do you want to give it one more try with a team that's got a real shot here, or do you want to go to Oklahoma and maybe play a little bit more of the long game? Like, yeah, Oklahoma can be good this year. I don't know that they go from, the season they had to suddenly in the national championship picture entirely, but I don't know. That's something that only Jim Knowles knows the answer to. But right. If Oklahoma pulls that off, Jay, I mean, it would be outstanding. Heck, by the time you're listening to or watching this segment, it might have already happened. And if it has,
Right.
we'll be doing a segment on this again next week with Jay Smith of Locked On Sooners. Great as always, my man. We're swinging back to the Big Ten, though, here on the show. Do you need to be aware, Big Ten fan bases, of Washington? You might. That's the answer to that question. Or is it? Is Washington back on the rise in the Big Ten after a 6-7 season? That's Roman Tomashoff of Locked On Huskies joining me here to discuss. Roman, there are plenty of things to like. Top 25 transfer portal class, bowl eligible in the first season with a massive reset from the year prior when they were the national runners-up. You've got a young up-and-coming quarterback in Damon Williams. He's going to have some weapons. I think there are things to like, but how aware should Big Ten fan bases be about what Washington could be in 2025?
Oh, Spencer, they should be extremely aware of what Washington brings to the table. And
extremely aware, not just mildly aware, everyone. Extremely aware.
I'll give you a couple reasons why. First reason is DeBron Williams. Shout out to Damon Williams Sr., who has tried to. Damon's a huge LeBron fan, so that's its own thing. But I needed to make sure I got that out to a larger audience. Damon Williams is so much fun to watch, an electric playmaker. Anybody who watched the Sun Bowl saw that. 374 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns, adds 48 yards and another touchdown on the ground behind a patchwork offensive line. Watching him throw the football is so exciting, Spencer. He's got so much zip to all 3 levels of the field. He can make every throw. That part in and of itself as a sophomore quarterback is going to be a lot of fun to watch, but he's got a couple of guys who are going to be very, very high on NFL draft boards in 2026. The first one, I would just say college football fans know him pretty well at this point. That's Jonah Coleman. Bringing him back for his senior season is going to be massive. We're going to see a lot more read option stuff from this Washington offense, which is going to be a lot of fun. The second one is a guy who is really ready to explode in 2025. That's wide receiver Denzel Boston. Bringing him back as a premier A1 target is absolutely huge for this defense. And Spencer, to be completely honest, I think they have the best cornerback in America, and that's Dekario Davis. Getting him out of the transfer portal, man, that guy would have been a first-round pick in this draft with this corner class of Travis Hunter, Ben Morrison, Will Johnson. Like, that's just the level of play Dekario Davis has. Getting him where he was a little down in 2024. There's no mistaking that. But bringing him back with cornerbacks coach John Richardson, who helped him play at that elite level in 2023, I couldn't be more excited about those guys in particular, just to start us off.
I think the guys that make me turn my head the most are certainly Williams, not just what he did in the Sun Bowl, but in the game prior against Oregon. I know it was a blowout loss because the rest of Washington's roster was outmatched, but Damon Williams put on one of the best passing performances that Oregon allowed at Autzen Stadium all year. Like, if you rank quarterback performances at Autzen Stadium from the 2024 season, it's Will Howard number 1. It's probably Damon Williams number 2. He completed 17 of 20 passes, did not throw an interception, and he was sacked 10 times while doing it. I'm with you that his potential.
Can I interject for 1 second? Because I'm ashamed of myself for not bringing this up a little bit earlier. Do you know off the top of your head what his completion percentage was in the Sun Bowl?
I believe it was 83%.
81%, but yeah,
81%.
It's not.
I'm shockingly good sometimes.
Yes, you are. This is why you do this show. But it's not. Again, it's not just the arm talent; it's the accuracy as well. I'm sorry. Please continue.
No, yeah, and I like Boston as well. I think he's got all the potential to emerge as a go-to guy for this Huskies offense. I've been a big Jonah Coleman fan for the last couple of years in college football, but you can't talk about Washington going into next season, Roman, without bringing up the change at defensive coordinator. You lose Steve Belichick, who you liked coming into last season and all throughout the year. I think he mostly did a really good job. He goes to North Carolina to coach with Dad. That's not that big of a surprise. I love the hire of Ryan Walters from Purdue, the former head coach. I think if you had ranked at that time when he was brought on board the top 5 to 10 defensive coordinator candidates available, I can't see him being outside the top 10. He probably wouldn't have been outside the top 5. I think this has been a really under the radar staff move and a really, really good hire.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Even like I'll take it a step further. I don't know if he falls outside the top 3. Like, you look at his last year at Illinois, what that defense was before he moved into a head coaching role, just absolutely tremendous. Number 1 in scoring, number 3 overall in total defense. Like, that was a truly elite defense. He did a great job developing some of the talent there. But Spencer, the biggest question when it comes to what Washington's defense is going to be under him is what the front 7 is going to look like. You're losing 10 of your 12 leading tacklers from the roster, not just, from the front seven, from the roster as a whole. But they went out and they did a fantastic job addressing it. I think one of the most underrated transfer portal acquisitions is defensive tackle Simone Peppa, who's coming over from Utah after spending 4 years in Kyle Whittingham's system. I would take any defensive tackle that played that kind. Yeah, he's got some injury questions, which is why he's probably going to be a little bit lower, in terms of the rankings. But if he's healthy, he's in a solid rotation. I love what he brings to the table. And then in terms of on threes rankings, you added 3 of the top 20 linebackers available in the country. That's X3 Alexander from Central Florida. That's Jacob Manu from Arizona, who's probably going to redshirt because he's still dealing with an injury. And that's also Buda Al-Ukta from Washington State. And that guy is somebody who's always around the ball, always making plays. And in this Walters front, where you're going to see a lot of 5-down linemen, or a lot of 3 defensive linemen and 2 outside linebackers in a kind of bare front sort of look, you're only going to see 1 inside linebacker on the field a lot of the times. But the guys they brought in to replace, some stalwarts in the program, in Carson Bruner and Alfonso Tupatala, and a guy who everyone was really excited about in Kamori House, I don't think they could have done a better job. I think you could have done a little more on the defensive line, but in terms of the guys they brought in, Tai Uyunglele from Arizona is another one that I really like. I think they did a really good job making sure that it's ready for the Big Ten in 2025.
Is that Uyunglele name of the Uyunglele names in college football we've already come to know for the last, half decade plus?
Yeah, it's, cousin, I believe.
Cousin. Okay, so good to know that legacy will just continue in college football forever until the end of time. And
only 1 year, though. He's only got 1 year left.
Well, I'm sure that Mateo and DJ have other cousins out there who can play football. But the question I have about Washington, Roman, is what do you define as success going into next year? They were one of the few teams. There were actually several teams whose record I predicted exactly right coming into the season. I didn't have every game right, but I had Washington at 6-6. They went 6-6 in the regular season. That's kind of where you and I discussed this team going into last year as, hey, that'd be a solid year. Like with the amount that was lost and what you're replacing, all the turnover and such, making a bowl game, that'd be a pretty solid season. You did that, made a bowl game, got the quarterback of the future, some real experience and playing time to load up for this year. So now, as the offseason currently stands, there's still another transfer portal window, and we'll see how spring ball shakes out and what stories emerge from there coming out of Seattle. But what do you look at as, a reasonable expectation of success for Washington?
First of all, flex on all those records you predicted exactly right.
I'd have to count. There were less than 10, but more than 5.
Respect. I'll give you that. I will say, if not for self-inflicted wounds in the Washington State and Rutgers game, I would have gotten exactly right at 8-4, which is unfortunate, but a story for a different day. But the reason
that just means we've established who the real Huskies football expert is between the two of us here. That's all I heard.
Yeah, let's go with that for the time being.
I agree.
But I say 8-4 because right now I'm in the 8-4, 9-3 camp. I think the schedule is a lot more favorable than it is last year, where the 3 toughest games on the schedule right now, in my opinion, Ohio State, Oregon, Illinois. All those teams are coming to Husky Stadium. You've got a couple of tough road trips. You go to the Big House, you got to go to Camp Randall, and you got to go to College Park in Maryland. But I look at that and I say, all right, that's not nearly as tough as having to go to Iowa last year with an offensive line that was still, patchwork, going to Indiana, and what that turned out to be. Well, that was, Spencer, you and I were sitting here at this time last year, not expecting that. And then on top of that, you go to the whiteout, you go to Oregon. Like that was a really, really tough slate of road games.
That's 3 playoff teams that you had to play on the road.
Yeah, exactly. That's not, if there are 2-3 playoff teams from this next year, they're going to be at home. So that's going to look a little bit different, but I look at the upgrades that this team has made in every facet, where you got a couple of really nice high-end upgrades, and then you got a lot of guys that are just, okay, you need somebody to do a job. You need to do it for 1 year. Well, you get to guys on the roster that you really like. I'm really happy with how Jedd Fisch and this coaching staff have utilized the transfer portal. And right now I'm in the camp of 8-4, 9-3. I think that there's an opportunity to take a really big step forward. And a lot of that is because you have a really promising quarterback in Demond Williams.
Roman Tomashoff, Locked On Huskies. Great as always, my man. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.